again, if you turn inward, find your authentic voice, you can create your own model, but don't get wrapped up in the false safety of those shoulds, because then you're missing out on the exponential possibilities of the coulds of your creative map that you can create. Once I got honest with myself about what do I really enjoy and how can I best serve my clients by using that enjoyment as my compass, it's made, I can't even tell you the areas in which it's made a difference, both professionally and personally.
It's when you tap into that authenticity, there's a different energy shift within ourselves, but also what you vibrate. Hi, folks. Benjamin Ye here. Today's guest is my dear friend, Shari Alexander. We're going to dive into the topic about finding your authentic voice. You'll definitely want to tune in to today's episode. Let's cue the intro. Welcome to the Boom Vision Podcast. I am your host, Benjamin Ye. This show is about giving you the perspectives and framework on how to gain clarity and unlock your hidden breakthroughs. It's time for you to live an extraordinary life that you design. Let's get to work. What are conscience? I'll tell you. A conscience is that still small voice that people won't listen to. That's just the trouble with the world today. That quote was by Jiminy Cricket in the animated movie Pinocchio. Hi folks, welcome back to Boom Vision. Today's show, we're going to talk about what is your authentic voice and how listening to your intuition can help guide you in uncovering your authentic voice. Today's show is a very special one because we have our very first guest that I had the pleasure of interviewing here at Boom Vision. I've known Shari for almost a year now, and not only is she an awesome human being, but she's intentional in how she's mastered her craft. In terms of her bio, Shari Alexander has built her entrepreneurial career on a love and fascination for language. As the founder of Observe, Connect, Influence, a full-service communication strategy firm, Shari serves as both coach and consultant. In her coaching with entrepreneurial experts, Shari helps entrepreneurs identify and leverage their unique voice within their industry. Then she and her team build multi-channel campaigns that align with that voice, educate niche target markets, and drive sales. Outside of her one-on-one client work, she also is a professional speaker with training programs that teaches audiences processes and techniques for being more influential in aligned and ethical ways. At the core of her multi-pronged career is a reverence for the power of words and a hope that the more brands and people can educate ourselves about that power of words, the better we can connect with one another to create a positive impact. So without further ado, here's Shari. Shari, welcome to the Boom Vision Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to the conversation very much.
Likewise. So starting off, I'd love to hear your origin story. How does your story start?
Sure. So my professional origin story begins when I was about 24-ish years old. Was out of college and got my pretty much one and only 9-to-5 job, at which I lasted a whopping 11 months. And while at that job, it was a PR company for a national nonprofit, or PR arm of a national nonprofit. And while I was there, I quickly made a name for myself because I was able to, within the first 6 weeks, land an account that was the biggest account that they had seen in over 5 years. I was able to land a national company that they had been pursuing for a number of years previously as well. And so, again, I'm fresh out of college and I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I'm doing a great job. Wonderful. But that started a domino effect that I did not expect of office politics and some backstabbing and just kind of very toxic energy that I wasn't prepared for and honestly didn't want to sign up for. So at the 11-month mark, I decided I'm going to break out and I'm going to do my own thing. The reason why I was so successful in that position was because of my presentation skills. In college, I was a theater major and I had, stage presence, but I was always very into how to deliver a message, how to craft a message, and even an experience with people. And that's what served me in the position. And even back in college, I had professors saying like, "Oh, you're really good at these presentation skills thing. You should consider doing this professionally." So when I left that position, I was young, I was naive, I was brave. And I thought, well, let me give it a go on starting my own brand, starting my own company, and see where it goes. Because, hey, if I fail, I still can always, land back on my parents' couch and figure it out in the end. But thankfully, it all did work out. And so, probably for the first 6 years of my career, I solely was focused on presentation skills. I was a professional speaker. I went to conferences. I did trainings and workshops. Later on, I was even approached by people to be a speechwriter for executives and even keynote speakers. Later on, for politicians and writing their stump speeches. And all of that was wonderful. But around that 6 year mark, I just felt like I had reached the ceiling in what I could learn in that field. Because when you're a presenter, you're persuading with a safety net, a few safety nets. You can prepare your remarks ahead of time. You have slides, you have notes. The audience has to sit and be quiet and polite while you speak. Like, you're persuading with a lot of tools that are assisting you. But I really developed a curiosity about what about when you need to be persuasive when you don't have all of those safety nets, when you don't have all of those control valves. And that started an interesting exploration where I asked myself, who are the most persuasive people in the world? Who can persuade no matter what, and even in high stakes scenarios? So that began a journey and some research where I ended up reaching out to and interviewing CIA field operatives, hostage negotiators, undercover DEA agents and other law enforcement, military intelligence officers, trial attorneys with amazing win records. All of these people who had quite a few cases, life and death scenarios, that the outcome was determined by what they said, how they said it, and their words. And even though my business has taken, the brand has evolved in different ways, I've always stayed in the niche of communication skills because I think that words are most powerful and most untapped tools as human beings. I truly believe that if more of us understood the power of our words and brought more consciousness and awareness to our words, quite frankly, I think it can change the world, however grandiose that sounds. And so over time, I learned the skills from those amazing, fantastic individuals and then applied it to business professionals, entrepreneurs, thought leaders who wanted to be persuasive in a wide variety of areas, but didn't quite know how to make it all connect, make it all fit. And more importantly, to what I believe we're going to be talking about today, have it feel authentic to them. Because the world of influence and quote unquote influence experts, there's a lot of sleazy advice out there. There's a lot of questionable ethics. And I didn't like that. I think that influence has gotten a bad rep, and I really wanted to change that. And so I've always stayed close to how can we help people be more influential in an authentic and ethical way that makes the world a better place.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Shari. It sounds like your journey and your career, it's about listening to your own intuition in terms of what feels right. At what inflection point did you come across in your career where you knew this is a path that you wanted to create?
Well, early on, I've always been a consumer of language. I was that super nerdy kid that went to the park all by myself and was reading Shakespeare plays, for fun.
I love it.
That was me. And
yeah.
How those words can create emotion and visions, and it's beautiful stuff. So that was very early on, to the point of I feel like part of that was in my DNA. But I'd say more recently, probably in the past maybe 4 or 5 years, a different inflection point started to happen where for those first number of years as mainly a professional speaker, my business model was built on a lot of the advice that I was getting, which was, you are the brand, you should be front and center, you should be on stage, and you should be the person that people turn to and look towards. And so there was this front of stage persona that I mean, I can do it and I enjoy it to a certain level, but not nearly as much as I enjoy the magic that happens backstage, behind the scenes. And in the past few years, I got really honest with myself about what do I really love about my work? What do I really enjoy doing? So it's shifted. I still deliver speeches, but I really enjoy, I'll do an occasional keynote, but I really enjoy workshops and training and facilitation. I like making other people the stars. I
Mm.
like helping other people find that alignment and that energy to make a difference because to me, that's how I feel I can make an exponential difference in the world, hopefully as much as I can. And so yeah, it's been an interesting transition of embracing that element of me because even though I certainly can present as extroverted, truth be told, I'm an introvert. Again,
Mm.
reading Shakespeare in the Park by myself, like that's me.
Yeah. That's where you draw your
So
energy from.
yeah, and so that's been an interesting transition and journey. And honestly, it's been so much more freeing because once I got honest with myself about what do I really enjoy and how can I best serve my clients by using that enjoyment as my compass,
Mm.
it's made, I can't even tell you the areas in which it's made a difference, both professionally and personally.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm just getting goosebumps just hearing it because it could definitely feel it. It's when you tap into that authenticity, there's a different energy shift within ourselves, but also what you vibrate, right? What you attract.
Right. And to your point, what you vibrate, it resonates differently in the
Yeah.
people that you interact with. And it brings out different things in them because, we all have to wear a mask in some form or fashion. Society slaps a mask on us, whether we like it or not. And it takes time to deconstruct that. But especially as entrepreneurs and business owners and brand builders, we have to then explore that mask on whole different levels
Mm.
than the normal person who doesn't do these things because you're both deconstructing and constructing simultaneously, and it's a very interesting process.
No, I actually touched on something where I think I want to dive into a little more. I know what you're saying in terms of example of mask. I think the word I use is more like identity.
Mm,
And the thing is that we have certain identities we want to bring forth, whether it's, with your friends or with your family or in your professional setting. The real question though is, does your voice alter as you're also presenting that identity?
yeah, so I'm a kinesthetic person. I'm strongly kinesthetic versus visual or auditory.
Mm.
And for me, that compass or that tuning fork or that litmus test is how do I feel in my body when I'm interacting, when I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing, or if I'm talking to whoever I'm talking to. Because when it's inauthentic, when I really am wearing a mask, and for sure I did it for a very long time, I think we all do. And hopefully, as we get older, we learn to go inward
Hmm.
when I'm wearing that mask, again, I'm not auditory, so I don't know if it presents in the voice or that's not where my awareness goes. But for sure in my body, I can feel a different feeling in my stomach. I can feel a different tension in my chest and my shoulders. I also, my hands get tense. That's one
Mm.
thing that I notice is I'll start to like, not quite, but almost like clench my fists a little bit
Yeah.
because it's like my body's trying to work
Signal.
harder than it
Uh,
needs to. Yes.
Yeah.
That's just something that I've used, especially in rebranding and all of that, is how does this literally feel? Almost like a
Yeah.
somatic approach.
I get it 100%. I agree with that too, because I think, everyone's just different, right? Some people are just more visual, some people's more auditory, right? In your case, you go with your feeling because we all
Mhm.
have our senses, but which one really heightens when it's trying to signal to you, hey, you should go one
Mm.
way versus another, right? And so I think that leads into my next question, which is like, at what point in your career did you finally determine to listen and act on your authentic voice?
Mm. Well, so COVID happened. And that, solitude was forced upon many of us. And I was single at the time, so I was definitely, in solitude. I was in a very hard quarantine out in California. So, Yeah, it was some forced alone time, which presented its challenges. But I'm very thankful because just a few years prior, a friend had recommended to me Letters to a Young Poet, which
Hmm.
is written by, I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, but Rainer Rilke. And in that book, he talks about the importance of solitude, how you need to choose solitude and embrace solitude because that's how you find it's basically getting rid of the noise so that
Yeah.
way you can hear what's actually the noise in your own head and then sort and organize and get clear on what's true, what's not, what serves, what doesn't. And I embraced the solitude. I really chose like it felt like a it's difficult to talk about COVID because clearly it's tragic and terrible and horrible in so many people's lives and created such a big impact. And at the end of the day, I was in the fortunate position where I could use that solitude as an opportunity to go inward and listen because it just felt like the world was turning upside down and I just felt like I didn't have an anchor. And I needed to turn to myself for that anchor, both professionally and personally. So part of that solitude and that journey was listening to myself. It's like the world was standing still in one way. So I didn't care what people were saying on social media in regards to like marketing experts and branding people in the entrepreneurial hustle world. I felt like I finally was given permission to tune them out because y'all don't matter because the world is on a standstill. So I don't
Hmm.
have to listen to you right now. And it was so freeing. And it was one of the most creative times I've had because I could listen to myself again. I could hear myself. I could have conversations with myself. And from that, I made changes to the business model. I made changes to how I market and approach things. I was off social media for well over a year and my business tripled. So all of these things I was quote unquote supposed to be doing or should be doing to grow my business, I wasn't. And yet my business grew faster than it ever had before.
I really resonate with what you said because it's similar to what I shared about quieting your wind tunnel. Because I think when you give yourself that space of solitude, you turn off that switch so that you can really collect your thoughts to do that searching at much more at ease, where you're in that
Mhm.
calm state.
Yeah. And I think one subconscious process that I went through that took me a while to bring awareness to was I paid attention to what I was consuming because I couldn't go out to the park. I couldn't go to the movie theater. I couldn't,
Mm,
go hang out with friends and go out to eat. All of those enjoyments and oftentimes distractions were
right.
gone. I was left with raising my puppy and training him and
Yeah.
consuming content on the internet.
Right.
That
Right.
was it. And during that time, I started asking myself, why do I consume this? What is it about this that interests me? What are the elements that grab my attention? And what could I enjoy about that particular thing? And what do I not? What examples just make me not feel good? And what examples do make me feel calm and grounded and like, a breath of fresh air. And in that time, by bringing that awareness to what I was consuming, it helped me find the puzzle pieces for my own voice, what I could accumulate and bring together that made it uniquely me and mine and aligned and all of those things.
Powerful stuff. So, as you evolved in your life path, what did you uncover as one of your superpowers?
Yeah, I mean, normally I would say, so a compliment that I receive often is, oh, you're very articulate. And I appreciate that. I do. I feel like I put effort and awareness to my words because I hope that I practice what I preach, that I walk my talk as much as possible. I've gone from wanting to be the person at the front of the stage to really enjoying and embracing the back of stage, the behind the scenes work. And in that, I feel like a superpower that I have is probably, to put it short, being a mirror for my clients,
Hmm.
to reflect back to them what I'm hearing them say and what I'm seeing them. And when I notice a shift in when they're talking about one thing versus another, So that way it helps them find awareness around, hey, this is your strength. When you show up like this is how you can be persuasive. This is where we should set our intention and point our goals towards. That feels more and more like my most recent superpower that I don't think I really knew that I had or understood that I had because I was doing all the quote unquote marketing shoulds of focusing on me,
Right,
putting
right.
me versus putting them in the spotlight and yeah, just reflecting back to them because then when they hear it from somebody else, they go, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. Yes, you're right. That feels way more fun. Or yeah, when I did that, it didn't feel right or aligned, but I thought that that's what I was supposed to do. And yeah, so being that mirror has been joyful and helpful and effective, I guess I could say.
I'll probably add something to that too, which is, I think we had this conversation before. I actually see you as a prism in the sense that when people come to you and they might not have that clarity in terms of what color they're really trying to emit, but through you and helping that facilitation, you help distill, well, actually, it's these rainbows of colors, but these are areas that you're really strong at. And they get that crystal clarity on terms of how to really define the light to really whether it should be shining. You know what I mean? Because when I think of a
Mhm.
mirror, I think of it's a direct reflection, which that in of itself, you can get clarity, but I actually think you take it one step further. So,
I
whether that
appreciate that.
resonates and,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. When you had that reflection for me, it was very helpful because you're right. I specifically work with experts in their field. And so along with that metaphor, they've spent years to create that laser focus, that
right.
white light, accumulating everything in its most condensed form. But when they need to communicate, they need to break it apart again. They need to branch it out so other people can consume it. They can't get the
Yeah.
concentrated version right away. And you're right. I do. Thank you for reminding me of that. I should say that more often. Because yeah, through the process, I'm able to take that concentrated expertise and then fan it out and present it in a way that, the hope and intention is that it's beautiful and people are drawn to it and they want more and they consume it. And
Right.
yeah, that is a good chunk of my job for sure.
Fantastic. And so, talking and coaching through entrepreneurs and thought leaders, like what's the most common either mistake or blind spot that you see your clients tend to have?
So we've talked about it. There's a lot of noise in this world, and it takes a lot to mute that noise. And by far the biggest message in that noise, especially when it comes to marketing and sales and reaching out to your target market and thought leadership and edutainment and all of those things, there's so many shoulds
Hmm.
thrown at you. You should have a website. You should have a lead magnet. You should have an automated funnel. You should have videos. You should have a podcast. You should have, of different pricing in your programs. You should do this. It should. And that clouds so much perspective for clients. It clouds up the can. You
Hmm.
can do this. You could do this. There's so much creativity that is just left absolutely dormant because they're chasing the shoulds. And interestingly enough, oh Ben, this has gotten to me recently.
Do tell, do
It's
tell.
well, it's just so interesting that as entrepreneurs, we became entrepreneurs for a wide variety of reasons, but generally a theme is freedom and independence and flexibility. And yet somehow this world has finagled us into serving the all-powerful algorithm that we
Right.
must be on the hamster wheel of posting X number of days or X number of times per day, per week, per month, emailing, video. Like, it's like somehow our society, entrepreneurial society for sure, traded one hamster wheel for another. I don't know. I don't have like a clear conclusion out of this, but at least to bring awareness around what if you weren't serving the algorithms? What if you were connecting with humans? What would that look like?
Right.
And then we can weave in the technical algorithmic stuff because that's always going to be there. Yeah, all that to say, we're inundated with shoulds that, back in the day, in the early days of internet marketing, when I started, they were legit. Those were the path. There was a very particular path that if you took it, it was going to work because the internet was so new. But now what I think people are missing in that blind spot is today, in regards to methodologies and ways in which you can communicate with your target market, with the world, the options are boundless.
Mm-hmm.
So why follow one template when, again, if you turn inward, find your authentic voice, everything that you talk in your podcast, you can create your own model. That doesn't mean to ignore what other people have done and to learn from past experience. Of course, you got to do that. But don't get wrapped up in the false safety of those shoulds, because then you're missing out on the exponential possibilities of the coulds of your creative map that you can create.
Totally agree with what you're saying, because it's like, sometimes we're too focusing on the tool that we're using at hand that we sort of lose sight on, wait, what entree are we really creating here? Right? Like, what are we really serving here? What are we trying to create? There's always going to be another shinier tool or sharper tool or whatever you want to be, or, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, what is it that you want to serve, and do people really need? And when you just beeline to that directness of it, I feel then you don't get caught too much in a game of, like you said, whether it's algorithm or whatever platform that you may be.
Well, and I know with your background and the people that you serve, I think they probably face similar, but just in a different form, different types of shoulds, right? Like, so
Yeah.
you have more experience in the corporate world than I ever did. So
There is a lot of shoulds that it's easy for you to get caught up in that game. And what I find is, well, you have to give yourself those moments, quieting that wind tunnel. Like when you give yourself that space to do that, then you can easily be able to distinguish, wait, is this really my voice, or is this the sound of someone else's that's telling me what I need to do? And sure, you can get caught up in the exterior, but the more you can really listen from within, really where the magic happens. And, like, I'll give you an example. I was coaching this entrepreneur, and he really helps either folks that are looking to get a technical job, like in programming, or they might have it, but then they need to level up in terms of their programming skills to be able to serve better for their clients. And he's purchased different sales frameworks and, do this to jump to 6 figures, 7 figures. And it's almost like he's looking for those shortcuts, and he's looking for the tools. He's emphasizing on a tool. And when he does so, it hasn't been working. And so what I shared with him was, look, at the end of the day, yes, you're providing a service, but what are you really serving? Are you serving a product, or are you serving people? And once he got that clarity that, well, I'm really serving people, then it's like, well, is your messaging resonating that I'm serving people, or is all your copy, whether it's on website or whatever it is, all about the product? And so that was sort of an aha moment for it. And it's like, it kind of goes back to what you're saying. Yes, there is the algorithm depending on what platform you're talking about, but I just feel like you kind of have to check in. Where's your map and compass? Am I going in the right direction?
yeah, one thing that you said that sparked something is, I can't remember exactly how you said, but it's kind of like your voice, or one thing that kind of surprised me, especially when I was looking at, tweaking the business model and doing the different offerings for clients and stuff, was I would notice that certain assumptions would just pop in my head. And I would think like, oh, no, that's not the way that's supposed to be. Or, oh, no, I can't do it that way. Or, oh, no, people don't like that. And what would actually be in my head, real like a half a second, would be a snapshot of one moment when one person said one thing and it imprinted. It was like, oh, yeah, okay, well, that person who I trust, and they're very successful, and they said that one thing that one time, and I didn't really look into it, but I believed it, so that I made a mental note and it stayed. And I think it's like you said, shortcuts. We forget about context. So much context gets overlooked of what are your personal strengths and weaknesses? What is your particular background? What resources do you actually have at your disposal? What, and just deconstructing those things, and bringing into that equation of all the context, versus the many years of when you heard one person say one time and it imprinted. Yeah, to take a moment to second guess that thought or just question it. Because
Yeah.
like I heard this phrase recently of like, you're not, and this is generally speaking, you're not responsible for your first thought, meaning that's the thought that society placed on you when it comes to your thoughts or impressions about a lot of different scenarios. But you are responsible for that second thought, that third thought, the fourth thought. And I think that that sentiment was applied more to like sociological issues and things. I think it needs to be applied more to our marketing and our branding and like you talk about the authentic voice. Yeah, you're going to have that first thought. You can't help it. That's the way we're wired. But then pay attention to the second, the third, the fourth. And I think you just drill deeper into your own personal truths.
Yeah, no, it really resonates too because how I explained it in when I talk about the inner voice is that the inner voice is pre-programming from your subconscious operating system, from your SOS, and that's programming that was downloaded to us when we were kids, when we were infants, when we're young, and without really making a conscious effort to upgrade that, those might be either beliefs or limiting beliefs, whether it's from our parents, whether it's from like, our culture. I have two young kids. It's like some parts of me where I just say, oh my God, I'm turning into my dad or I'm turning into my mom, right? And it's like, wait, how did that happen? Well, it's because when we were younger, we observed. That's how we downloaded these programmings. And until we quiet the mind, until we make a conscious effort to reprogram it, that's the only way for you to really make a lasting change on what kind of programming voice do I really want that will serve me on the direction I want to go. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what you shared about, it's really about the second thought, the third thought is because, are you asking the right questions? Because different questions will yield different answers, which can profoundly impact your outer reality. Right. Is what I say. So,
Yeah.
totally.
Oh, yeah. That's a fun topic of reframing questions and the changing the outcome. Ooh, we can nerd out. Yep.
For sure. For sure. Well, and so, I wanted to touch on something you've also shared too, is that do you find there's a correlation between persuasiveness and self-confidence or self-worth?
Yes and no. So, on a surface level, it's well documented in a lot of different fields that being charismatic is persuasive, that if you are charismatic enough, you can persuade people. The way that we as human beings are wired and our own evolution is that charisma, which tends to come from can be a subsect of confidence. Now, is it true confidence or a facade of confidence? That needs to be determined given the context. But yes, that can be persuasive. Now, that matrix of self-worth and confidence equaling persuasiveness, that's a tricky subject because you can fake a lot. There are a lot of successful, powerful, influential, persuasive people that when you get to know them, have very little self-worth, have very little confidence. And all of these results that they're gaining is out of whether it's a defense mechanism or, trying to prove that id of themselves wrong or whatever it may be. That is one aspect. But another aspect is the truly aligned confidence and comes from true self-worth, true self-belief. And I honestly believe that both get results. They do. I wish I could say different, but that's just the way the world is. If you're somebody that's interested in making an impact, being a catalyst for change, and wanting to create positive shifts in our society or in your target market or in the collective consciousness, whatever it is for you, I truly believe that building the facade of confidence with low self-worth, that's a house of cards. That can be built, but it will not last long. And the true types of shifts that your listeners who are coming to this podcast, the type of change that they want is the type that lasts, is the type that goes into generations. And that comes from that self-worth, that introspective, that authentic voice, all of those elements. So yeah, they both can get results. I just think that one lasts longer than the other. And I think one has a deeper impact for change in humanity as well. So
Yeah,
does that
no,
make sense?
It does. I think, my takeaway from what you just shared, Shuri, is that one can be very persuasive, but if it's not in alignment with your authentic voice, then you're furthering the gap between what you might be good at on the exterior world, but then in terms of your fulfillment or happiness inside, that's where it doesn't harmonize, right?
Yeah, harmonize. Great term. Great
Yeah,
term.
we mentioned this before in previous conversations, but it's that tuning fork, right? Tuning fork has a certain frequency, has a certain sound, and where I find people that have outer success but just are not happy inside is because they've created a sound that they know and they perfected that this is what society wants to hear. But
Right.
if your heart it does not want to emit that sound, and it's just not in harmony, then the further you ignore that inner sound of what it really wants to emit, you're just not going to be happy. Or the gap's just going to further divide. And it's only until you really not only listen but act on it, right? Clarity comes from action, not just thought. And so, do you take action with it? That's what I share about. How do you make those inner breakthroughs to outer breakthroughs? Because you got to be able to take the right actions to be able to actually manifest and for that to happen, right?
Right, right. Yeah. Well, and to your point, again, I just go back to that word of shortcut. Of course,
Yeah.
we all want shortcuts. Of course we do. They sound fantastic and wonderful. And yeah, some shortcuts absolutely work and should be taken. But we also have to come to peace with the fact that life is messy, that none of this is linear, none of it. Uh,
Right.
and your path is always going to be your path. There's no getting around that. It can't be anybody else's. And accepting that, both the responsibility and the agency that comes with it, is scary. It's ugly. It has very not fun moments.
Right.
But on the other side, you wouldn't change it for the world.
No, 100%. There's beauty in chaos if you believe in that thought. And the only question is, you just have to be able to see it that way. Not everything needs to be chaos, but I'm just saying sometimes it's designed that way because there is beauty if you just take a step back. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So another question I have is what I've called Tom challenge, right? Top of the mind. What's a common challenge your clients have faced in their role or in their business right now? And what do you feel is the root cause for that?
Mm. So my clients in particular, just kind of the general avatar, so to speak, is they are business owners who have been in business for at minimum 5 to 7 years. They've got a good sized small team working for them. But their role up to this point in their business is they have been the rainmaker. They've been the hustler. They've cultivated the relationships. They've built their client profile. And the challenge that they face, and the reason why they come to me, is they don't know how to capture kind of like that lightning in a bottle of
Hmm.
what has made them so successful in those relationships and dynamics and building rapport with people. They've hit a ceiling because now they don't have the bandwidth to work on the business because they're so busy working in the business because they're the rainmaker for the business.
Right, right. They can't clone themselves. So it's like, what do you do? Right.
Exactly, exactly. So I help them clone themselves. I've never actually said it that way, but in essence, that is sort of part of the process of the business term that we use is, how do we scale your communication? So that's my role as communication strategist, is figuring out how do we scale your communication, what made you so special in your role, and then how can we bring nuggets of that magic into other methodologies that don't require you to be present, don't require your bandwidth or time, but still yield the results that not only grow the business and scale the business, but also you feel good about those, that you're not using methodologies or techniques that feel impersonal or sleazy or questionable or unethical or all of that stuff. So that's my job as a coach, is to help them identify those aspects, like you just said, the prism analogy, to
Mhm.
find their particular colors of their rainbow. And then as a strategist, it's my job to take those elements and fit them together in a particular order or a particular way that yields the results that they want for their business. Yeah, that's the challenge that they face, is I've worked my magic to the limit of what I am capable of doing. How do I apply it to other areas that I know I need to scale the business. But, and this is the big thing, is they have relationships with their clients. So their biggest fear is they don't want it to feel impersonal. They don't want it to feel like internet marketing. They
Yeah, like it's
don't like
automated,
that.
right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
And so we get creative and piece something together, particular ingredients that creates their unique recipe that works for them and their context and their resources and all of the things that we've discussed.
So here's I wouldn't say it's a curveball, but I think we're both a little bit of rebels within us. So I have a question for you here is that what's one thing about your profession that your peers would disagree with you about?
You don't need social media, folks.
Tell me more, because I feel like I'm stuck in that a little bit as you're trying to grow an audience and whatnot. But I mean, I'd love to hear. What do you mean by you don't need social media?
So Jay Bear, who's a marketing expert, lovely human being, he put it very well that social media is an ingredient. It's not the recipe. And
Mm,
I feel like that gets missed so much because in the wake of social media and online marketing and automation and all the things, what has gotten forgotten is all the IRL things that you can do. Like
right.
having actual, calling people up, having a conversation, in post COVID, going to events, seeing people, networking, cultivating relationships. I go back and forth with social media. I feel push pull dynamic with social media in so many ways. I love what it could be, and I get heartbroken by what it is more often than.
Mm,
And so I'm still hopeful, and it certainly is a tool. It's a tool in my toolkit for my business brand and my clients. So I'm not saying get rid of it or anything, but all I'm saying is it's an ingredient. And it certainly doesn't even need to be the main ingredient. And one thing that comes to my mind is like, it depends on the type of business that you're in. If you're selling $5 widgets, then you should have a strategy for $5 widgets.
right.
Great. If you are selling high ticket items that start at 10K, you should have a strategy for a 10K campaign. But the problem is so many people want high ticket results with a $5 widget strategy that often
Recipe for
nowadays,
disaster.
yes, it
Right.
doesn't work. And so if you think about like, if you're going high ticket, if you want to be in that upper echelon, whatever term you want to use, think about the elites of the elites. You think that they're going on social media and working deals? No, they are whining and dining and developing rapport and trust because you need a deeper amount of trust if you're asking for 5 million versus $5.
Right.
And I just think that terms like community and relationships are thrown out just so laissez-faire these days, and they don't mean it. What they
Mm,
mean by community is we have 5,000, I'm using a lot of fives. We have 50,000 people on our Facebook group. It's a great community. Is it a community? Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just jaded. I get it. But there are other options. For my clients, some of the biggest wins, I cannot tell you, biggest wins have come from mailer
wow.
campaigns,
Really?
sending out pieces of mail that people touch, interact with, and open. Now, I'm not saying, again, it's an ingredient, it's not the recipe, but that's one thing, just one example that people overlook. I have built my business. I started out in Oklahoma. I spent about almost 10 years in Los Angeles, and I'm just about to move to Texas. With each move, how did I build my community? How did I build my relationships? I actually went out to meet people? I went to local organizations and associations and went to events and was eye to eye with people. And that led to referrals, which led to clients, which led to more referrals. The amount of business I personally get on social media is very small because I'm also not engaging on social media for me. I'm too busy doing it for my clients. So all that to say, I feel like a shift needs to happen and a skill set has been lost when it comes to this hustle culture of entrepreneurship that yes, automation in the digital world is fantastic with what you can do. You can scale a lot. And again, I believe in what possibilities it presents, but don't overlook real life interactions. Don't overlook the power of actual one-on-one conversations because, I mean, I've had multiple referrals from like singular individuals that have made such a big difference. So all that to say, it's an ingredient, it's not the recipe, and also it's okay if it's just a seasoning and not the entree as well.
It goes back to what really is your end in mind. Are you just looking for increasing eyeballs or are you looking to increase connections? Right? Because you can get all the likes and views you want, but what is the purpose of what it is that you want to be able to communicate with, right? Is it to build meaningful connections or is it more of just getting more views? And I think, it's easy to come up in a game if that's what you want to play. But you just have to be authentic on what you want to play.
Right, exactly. And it goes back to authentic voice. I've been able to do what I've been able to accomplish in my business over these years because those are my strengths. Talking
Yeah.
to people is my strength. That's my skill set. I suck at the all that technical information and spreadsheets and numbers and I hate it so much. So, but for somebody who is not good one-on-one or does not enjoy interacting with groups and can look at spreadsheets and algorithms and understand, rock that stuff out, friend. You do that
Right.
because that's your
Yeah.
gift, that's your skill set. But I think so it goes back to the shoulds. So many people are trying to force themselves into what they think they should be doing versus embracing and accepting the aspects of themselves and then turn outward and go, okay, what are the communication outlets that best fit my style? And it doesn't
Right.
always start and stop with social media.
Yeah. I resonate with you because I think I have a very similar personality in that I'm more about building meaningful relationships. So I like and resonate more with the IRL in real life
Mhm.
than it is, there's so much you can do with Zoom or phone call versus just meeting a person, having a coffee and just like being able to just sense the energy of it. Being present in of itself is already
Yeah.
something you just can't get with just from hearing a voice or even on screen.
Yeah. It starts with that awareness of who am I and what fits best for the way that I'm made.
Fantastic. Okay, so Shuri, one more last question and before we wrap up today. If you had the ability right now to travel back in time to, let's say, 2011, so 10
Hmm.
years ago, and meet yourself, what would be one advice you'd share to your younger self?
Hmm. Oh man, I would tell her a lot. Uh, yeah. I would say it goes back to the topic of our conversation today and also your podcast in general and your work in general is trust yourself, girl. Just trust yourself because there's so much smoke and mirrors in this world and especially in this digital age and Hollywood can do a lot, man. There's just so much smoke and mirrors. And I fell for the illusion in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it was just part of the journey. So if I could give her that one piece of advice, it's just trust yourself because I ignored that intuition. I ignored that tuning fork and compass more than necessary. To this point, I look back and I was like, I was right the first time. I should have listened to myself. It's like years later, it's like, my gut was telling me that, but I didn't listen.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that's the message I would like for her to have.
that's beautiful. And Shuri, I would say the same for myself too, because and I share with my audience, and one of the main reasons why I created this is because, man, I wish my 30-year-old self had something like this because it wasn't really explained in a way that I would understand, being completely left brain, being completely, seeing is believing. And it's like I choose to ignore to listen to my intuition because like what is that about? It's not
Mhm.
logic. That doesn't make sense. I don't compute, right? And
Yeah.
but when I look back and all the times where my gut feeling is saying this, but I choose to ignore that and listen to it because logic didn't say it's the right thing to do.
Mm.
And it's like, oh my God, like all the lessons we've learned in part in our lives would have been probably cut more than half. We've just learned to grow that muscle. But it's hard because it's like, well, how do you know how to trust it? And that's probably a whole second interview
Right.
that we can go through with that. But totally, 100%. I think the sooner you can start listening and being able to distinguish, well, what's your intuition telling you, and to lean in on that and to act on that, right? Are you learning from mistakes, or are you learning to trust your intuition? Because I see those as two different things.
Interesting. Learning from your mistakes versus trusting your intuition. But don't the lessons from your mistake inform your intuition, or do you see them totally separate?
I see it separate because it depends on what your focus. Is my focus to strengthen my intuition, or is my focus to just solve the problem at hand?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, because what we were sharing, it's like, wow, if I just trust my gut feeling, and you look back, it's like, wow, my first choice would have been a right choice. Okay, well, I'll make a better choice. Well, is it that, or it's like, wait, what was that feeling I got? What was the type of voice? Did it come in as a voice? Did it come in as a vision? Because everyone's different, right? You go with feeling, and it's like, wait, how do I enhance that superpower? Because if I can use that, that's like your guiding light, right? That's like your soul GPS, I would call it. It's going to help you course correct if you listen to it. Otherwise, you keep going in the road you're in, but it might not be the direction you want to go to. So, Shari, I just want to say you're such a warm energy and a beautiful soul. I really, really appreciate you sharing your superpower with us today. Where can people go to connect with you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, the website is observeconnectinfluence.com. Those are the 3 stages of influence: to observe somebody, then connect with them, then you've earned the right to influence. So observeconnectinfluence.com. And there's a bunch of free tools. You can learn your influential personality type. You can download the Mind Reader Blueprint, which is a tool that helps you build your message based off of kind of those internal building blocks and key questions. And there's, feel free to reach out on the contact form if there's any particular question. I do engage with people that reach out. So happy to be of service whenever I can.
Fantastic. And then we'll also include Shari's information in our show notes. So that will be included. But Shari, again, thank you so much for joining Boom Vision's podcast today. Love to talk to you again.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Ben. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's interview as much as I have. The main takeaway I got from the insights that Shari shared is that the sooner you can trust your intuition and listening to the inner sound of your authentic voice, the better this will serve you in your business, your life, and your career. We all have that inner tuning fork that our soul wants to emit. Do you listen to it? Do you cultivate that sound? Or are you unintentionally putting it on mute? Whether it's for your business, your career, or you're just starting to create your life path, I urge you to start trusting your intuition. The world wants to hear your authentic voice, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not. You've got this. Until next time, folks, be kind to yourself, be in the light, be you. Thank you so much for tuning in to my Boom Vision podcast. If you'd like to find out more about me and this podcast, head over to benjaminyeh.com. That's spelled BenjaminYeh.com. If you haven't already, click subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.